Hi, I'm George, the Weather Dad, and on today's Weather Classroom, we're going to be talking about radar. In particular, can we see tornadoes on radar? The simple answer is yes, and I have 4 examples to show you. But when it comes to radar, what are we really looking at? Pretty much something like this, right? This is the radar site out of Wilmington, Ohio, about 50 miles to the northeast of downtown Cincinnati, and we see greens and some yellows. Radar shows us particle size, so when we're looking at light green, it's a pretty small raindrop, and then yellows, a little bit larger raindrops, and if we had any red here, that would mean very heavy rainfall. But for our example of showing you what a tornado looks like on radar, we kind of have to go back in time to March 31st, 2023. This is a graphic put out by the Severe Storms Forecast Center in Norman, Oklahoma, and what they think severe weather is going to look like on that day. You can see a bullseye right here in the mid-Mississippi Valley. There's Memphis and points north. So I took a lot of screenshots to show you what was going on that day. This screenshot here is about 5:30 in the afternoon. We're looking at a lot of activity developing. We also see this blue box right there. Well, that is a forecast discussion put out by the meteorologist on staff. He or she has given us their opinion of what the atmosphere is doing at that time and also later on in the afternoon. Also, we see some yellow boxes, those are severe thunderstorm warnings, and also some red boxes, which are tornado warnings. Now, our first example here, I'm looking at the southwest quadrant of this thunderstorm. We see some red and a little bit of white. Remember, red, very heavy rainfall, and the little white here is probably showing a little bit of hail at that point. But with radar, we can actually go in and penetrate the thunderstorm and take a look at the particle velocity, how fast it's moving, and also the direction. This next graphic here is what I'm looking for here is wind direction, the particles, where are they moving? Now, I'm looking for red and green color. Green goes one way, red goes the other way. In this case here, I see green, but the experienced radar operator is showing a little bit of a spin right there, thus issuing a tornado warning. Our next example here is at the southwest end of this very large and dangerous line of thunderstorms. You see a little bit of an inflow right there, a little bit of a quiet area. Well, that air is moving on into that area. Taking a closer look at that, we are now starting to see the reds and greens, and that is showing some spin right there at the tail end of that line. And in fact, there was a small tornado produced by that thunderstorm. Our next example here is a good example of what we call a hook echo. If you ever hear us talk about hook echoes, well, there's literally a hook in the thunderstorm itself. Once again, the southwest quadrant of the thunderstorm, which is also the most dynamic part of the thunderstorm. You see that nice little hook there. You have nice little wind flow going into it, and there in fact is the tornado. Taking a look here at the, again, wind directions, what I'm looking for, nice red and green, a lot of spin in the atmosphere. In fact, this thunderstorm did produce a fairly large tornado. Our last example here is another hook echo, not quite as photogenic as the last one, but nevertheless, it's still a hook echo. And once again, we're seeing the inflow here into this system. And we take a look at the wind flow there, there's a lot of red and a lot of green. In fact, this is a very large tornado and it's on the ground. You see a lot of green and red, lots of spin right there in the atmosphere. The other thing I want to point out is this little brown and white area. Once again, remember, radar is showing us particle size. So up there you see red, very heavy rainfall. But now we're looking at browns and whites. This is what we call a debris cloud. Radar is showing us that we don't have rain here necessarily, but we're seeing a lot of large particles and very dense particles, most likely soil and possibly debris as that tornado runs around the ground. So when you combine radar with trained spotters on the ground, we can certainly give you a heads up if or when severe weather is on the way. I hope that helps in clarifying a little bit what we're looking at when we are talking about radar tornadoes. Now, if you have a weather question you would like to have me answer, well, just email me at georgetheweatherdad.com. Until next time, I am George the Weather Dad.